Our third speaker in this session is Thomas Baldry. Thomas has been with Deutsche DHL since 1995. He started as direct marketing manager. His most recent position is Senior VP International Mail and International Relations. He looks after the German mail import and export business and manages the relationships with postal operators and postal organizations. He's previously worked very much on the new ventures and acquisition side, in helping to integrate them within the organization, particularly on the value-added mail services side. Thomas has got a master's degree in economics from Bonn University, and he lives in Bonn with his wife and 3 children. Please welcome Thomas Baldry.
Yes, good morning. Good morning. Are you still awake? Yeah? Who isn't? Hands up? No? Okay, good. Well, it's always difficult to speak after 2 high-profile speakers, and I've got, therefore, 3 proposals for you how to move forward. Number 1 is, I would take it seriously when John approached me and said, Thomas, can you please talk about universal service and global developments? I said, all right, that's fine. Okay, get some food and beverages in and lock the room for 2 days, and we have a discussion and session on that. Anybody in for that? No? What a surprise. Option number 2 would be, because we had such illustrious speakers already on the floor, and you said it all about what the scope of universal service should be in a modern economy, and we could just have coffee and leave the room. Anybody in for that? Okay, thank you very much. So here's my third option. I'll just give you my presentation. When I prepared for that, I thought, I could talk about our group. I can talk about my observations in my career regarding universal service. And I decided just to give you a few insights which might differ from those that you have seen already. In my career and also my job, I quite often have discussions and debates with politicians, regulators, advisors, lobbying groups, industry groups. And the theme of universal service, which was very, very prominent 10, 15 years ago, popped up again. Especially when some of us tried to move their companies forward when we IPO'd, so when we went public, when we tried to transform our company, when we had to release labor, when we had to redefine our services, and when we are also, or when those politicians were also facing very different signals and needs from the different customer sides. So in this respect, I always try to share or to impose on them 3 guiding principles. The one is, if we talk too much about USO, it distracts us from so many other factors which govern the market dynamics. Now, as a businessman, these are more important than just guidelines or principles defined by some politicians, which, as you all may know, normally takes years to define and then another few years to pass it through Parliament and to all the governing bodies and then to apply. So some of us are facing legal frameworks back home which are completely outdated. Number 2, it's technology and entrepreneurship that changes the market and not a legal framework. I mean, yes, of course it does. We have seen that, but sometimes to the good, sometimes to the worse. So normally, one should rely on the dynamics in a market if there is a dynamic market. And as we've seen, we all are playing on the parcel growth. We all are trying to grasp what's in the, or what is left in the letter mail market. So there are dynamics and there is technology that changes the game. And that is something that is much more important than talking about judicial lines and phrases. Number 3, in most of the cases, the customer not only gets what he wants, he gets more. At least more. Can you tell the person that I'm not there? Thank you very much. So he or she gets more than what has been required or stipulated by any law. So why having a framework that doesn't work? Now, this presentation is not about my advice. It's about the global developments. And I thought, okay, what can I do about it? You know, have 15 to 20 slides regarding to this and that development and this and that market. So instead, I got some news for you. And if this pops up, it takes 1 or 2 hours. I don't know. Let's see. In the meantime, I like to share with you what that means if you look at these headlines. I tell the politicians at the end of my few guiding principles, please keep your eyes wide open. Because if you keep your eyes wide open, you see all of this. You see dynamics. You see things like Canada Post phasing out home delivery. Now, for us Europeans, that's like outrageous, you know. I mean, this is our core. But if you talk to Canadians and if you see their history and if you appreciate that that's something they already did over the years, then it's just another model. You see FedEx buying TNT. Now, I grew up at a time when TNT, together with the mail part of what is now PostNL, was one of the rising stars in the postal industry because they've been ever so advanced. They've been so aggressive. They've been international. They went into all markets, including my home market. And boy, were they ahead of the pack. And now the game has changed. Oh, by the way, who of you is a consultant? Can I see hands? Consultants, okay? Don't be shy. Okay, let's assume 5%, okay? Whom of you would have foreseen that Toll Group gets bought by Japan Post? Oh yes, of course, you knew that, huh? Yeah, of course, me too, by the way. So this is something that is not so exciting when you think about the reason why. They probably looked at Deutsche Post, DHL, and thought, why did Deutsche Post buy DHL many years ago? And Danzas and all these logistics suppliers. Oh, they IPO'd, okay, let's do the same. So, okay, but still, honestly, that wasn't on the horizon. Or whom of you would have thought that Amazon would do delivery using the tube or the subway in New York instead of cars and bicycles? Whom of you would have thought that there is a company called Uber who actually operates alternative taxi or people transportation services doing delivery? Who of you would have thought that you can go to a trunk or booth of a car, open it up, and hey, there's your packet? It has been delivered by Volvo. We are testing it with Volvo, by the way. So there are so many things that pop up right now, so many alternative services. And the reason is not because it's a regulated market. The reason is because there seems to be money in it, money and scope. And this is the real driving force. Now, coming back to our core business, some of the trends and developments that shape our industry clearly are pricing. You see there are different mechanisms in the market. Some of them are more visible than others, but this is, by the way, a fabulous piece of discussion we had with the European Commission, we as the postal operators, where apparently small and medium customers were barred by going abroad with their services also because prices were a barrier. Now, there are a lot of developments that don't boil down just to the basic fact of here's the price, but it's a whole cosmos of pricing which appears at the horizon. So work sharing principles, contracts with kickbacks, lots of things that make it a very complex theme. I just want to drop this stone in the pond that this is one of the big dynamics ahead of us. The other one is access. How a customer can access a network, how networks relate with each other, and where are the different points of entry and exit to a network. The other one is visibility. I mean, track and trace is known to you, but who of you feels familiar with passive RFID chips? Yeah, you heard about them? Now, when we started to measure quality in the letter mail stream, We decided against barcodes because at that time the technology was very expensive. None of us had any machinery for that purpose in place. So we bought active RFID transponders, 20 euros a piece. Now you get a passive transponder which costs you 5 cents a piece. And you can imagine what that could imply once we have networks up and ready to read these transponders. It will be the alternative to a barcode. And this is a mushrooming thing, I promise you. I hope it's going to be a good and viable alternative also for those of us who have networks in place. But the basic requirement behind that is that both the sending and the receiving customer, they want full visibility on our services. The other one is choice. And choice does not only mean that you choose different service levels, but you choose several options. And you might even choose to have several providers. So we come from an industry where there was either natural or a given monopoly, so there was one service provider. Now, all of us have to get familiar with the idea that there are many service providers, and they keep changing. And our customers keep changing us, as we do change our suppliers every now and then. Convenience is a very important factor, which we all know. I mean, as private customers, we like to purchase things and then have options available even after the purchase. Now, in Germany, every other packet is returned. So we have return rates of up to 50%. Now, in some countries, you don't have any returns. Why? Because for the time being, the customer does not return. It's just not part of their living principle, of their behavior, of their shopping behavior and experience. But it's going to come. So we are all well advised to have return services in place. And the e-tailers who sell, they are well advised to work with these returns. So if you talk to the CEO of Zalando and ask him, do you believe that the returns that you get from your customers buying shoes is a problem for you? He would say, no, why? It's wonderful. The customer has a choice. And I don't have to provide an outlet where he comes and tries different shoes and then throws them around. No, they all come back nicely packed, and I can sell them once they're on the road. So what we think is a return for those customers is just stock on the move. So it's a different principle. Reliability. I saw that in your slide where you said it's either day certain or it's D+1, so next day delivery. I think there is much more to it, especially when you talk about cross-border services. But one fact's clear, it has to be reliable. So that's what we have to gear up for. And that is, especially when you talk about cross-border services, not a very easy task. Now, if we talk about the delivery options, I try to split that in two parts. One is the communication part, because this conference is not only about parcels, it's about universal service. And the bigger part of universal service, as you know, lies still in the letter mail area. So this is a little bit about communication. And the next slide is going to be about parcel delivery. This is from our own example. So when we talk about physical networks, we say the network is in place, in our case, is 6 days a week, and it has many, many access and drop points. And here you can read for yourself a few numbers of our Deutsche Post network in Germany. And that's there, and it has to be re-established every day. Now, one can regulate that and say, okay, you have to open up so many outlets, and you have to deliver so many days a week, and you have to open up so many mailboxes, but you can also leave that to a market. So in fact, what we did, Deutsche Post, over time was we thought that instead of a burden, it's really an asset to go to each household every day or almost every day. We also thought that instead of downsizing the access points, which we did in the past, by the way, as so many others, we increased them again. So we have more drop points for a customer than ever before. Why is that? Because it pays into the bucket of convenience and reach. And it's something that you need in order to have a strong network. So do you have to be regulated on that? Maybe not. Then we have seen that Koen and Adam, I like that name, Adam, by the way. Ireneus. You have also drawn a point here that you said there are also digital services in place. So we as postal operators, we have some trust to sell, which we do. And we can do that also in the digital arena. It's not black and white, it's not physical or digital, it's actually both. Just two examples here. We have our what we call e-Postbrief, which is a digital service. So the customer sends something to our premises, and then we either print or deliver digitally to the final receiver client. Last year, we transacted 500 million items. So it's already a very big and significant segment of our market. 5 years ago, we had nothing. We didn't do that at all. ZimSme, just another idea. It's also secure communication. It's fully digital. It's an app. You can download it. It's for free. And then it's encrypted messaging. So it's like WhatsApp, but it's safe. Many of my colleagues use that also for business communication. It's now available in 8 languages, and this will be something where we can show, look, we have some competence here. Now, you can trust us. It's more than just delivery. We are really a competent partner. Now, if there would be regulation on that, that would be, I don't know, what's the best word, awful? So something that is clearly out of the scope of USO, but inside the scope of a postal operator. On the parcel side, I like to divide this up into at home and not at home. These are the options that almost every network now provides. Front door delivery, you can choose a location. Either you do that by the time you order, so point of purchase, or you do that per se. You went to a portal where you then changed your delivery options, and then in the process of conveying that piece of parcel, the operator then takes that option and delivers to the preferred location. So it's within the process, so to speak. 2 years ago, we thought one of the biggest problems is that nobody is at home. And it's crucial because of the cost function. It's also crucial in terms of convenience. So we designed and we sold to the market so-called parcel boxes. So all of us can buy a parcel box, and the only guy who has access to that parcel box is our deliverer. So it's a safe thing. He opens it up with an electronic card. He puts the parcel there. He closes it. And whenever I come home, I open this box and my parcel is there. The other one is the neighborhood thing, which seems to gather pace in almost all countries. So it's about the options of delivery. Now, if the receiver is on the move, you can see the concept of pack stations, mushrooming everywhere. There are operators like InPost specializing on servicing those pack stations. Neopost went into that business. I guess almost everybody within this audience had a look at that concept already, which we pioneered about 10 years ago. I talked about the outlets and the parcel shops. So we used to have 20,000 postal outlets in Germany. We went down to almost 12,000. It was 14,000 when we stopped this development because of regulatory irritation, so to speak. And now we're at close to 50,000. So we actually have more than doubled the service that we used to have 20 years ago. The car booth, I already mentioned. Then we started a freaky thing. Funnily enough, at the very same time when Mr. Bezos started his delivery attempt with a parcel copter. It was all over the press. It was one of the biggest marketing gimmicks you can imagine. The best coverage ever. Better than paying money for Formula One, by the way. So we delivered a parcel from one side of the river to the other side with this parcel copter. Now we started regular deliveries to an island in Germany. Now, I can tell you, it's going to be a niche business. but it just shows the amount of creativity you can have when you're not confined by regulations. Talking about such, now I thought about, okay, what kind of message should I give if we really talk about universal service? And we draw up that picture. We said, okay, if you look at the pipeline, there are the Amazons, the Alibabas of this world, Zalando has been named, there are lots of startup.coms, and they all wonderfully fill this pipeline of supplying services to everybody everywhere. So clearly, that is something no regulator has to touch, others than regular stipulations regarding contract and purchase law and that. And then there's the private sector who contributes to it. So there's a lot of warehousing, pickup points, delivery, storage. That's all in the private sector, and you see little to none regulation on that. But then there's the public sector contribution, and that is a real issue. Now, we have to raise the question, for all this e-commerce ahead of us, is there enough infrastructure in place? Do we have enough and well-equipped ports, roads, airports? Especially in Asia, that has been and still is a huge bottleneck. What about city logistics? If you look at London and some other cities, and that's going to come in Asia, if you go to Shanghai, to Beijing, and Bangkok and all those places, the cities are full, they're crowded. And all of the city councils have to think about as to how they're going to regulate the access to those cities. And we as logistics providers, of course, we want to have a say in that, and we want to play a role here. Now, there are already concepts on trial where you kind of collect at the gates, so to speak, and then somebody drives into that. We do this kind of logistics, for instance, for Heathrow Airport, where we collect the services of 110 suppliers, and then one, and that's us, DHL, drives into the airport. But this is very complex, and you can imagine there's a lot of arm wrestling. Who's the supplier who is allowed to do this? So that needs some regulation. But there has to be also regulation on the flow of goods. We have trouble defining knife plights. We have customs issues. That's one of the next big battlefields if you look at the intercontinental traffic. Yeah, we already have bottlenecks there, and that's why I came up with this sand clock. These are the things that we as an industry, be it a supplier, a regulator, advisor, or a postal guy like me, have to convey to the governments and to the regulators. And if we talk about universal service, this is more important than defining a 5 or 6 days delivery rhythm. Yeah, and with that, I like to close with 3 observations. One has been mentioned many, many times this morning. Change comes even faster every day. Technology, entrepreneurship are the big drivers. Posts are the biggest players in this market for the time being. But if you look at stories like Alibaba, you might question that in a few years to come. However, we are not ahead of the pack. And you have mentioned that we have to stay active, and we have to catch up in some areas in order to be where our customers want us to be. So we have to broaden our perspective, and that also holds for the framework around us, therefore for the ministries, for the regulators, for the stakeholders that own us. If you talk to customers, despite all the regulation and all the other market irritations and challenges, the delivery bit seems to be still the core function for a good facilitation of e-commerce. So message to our regulators and dear governments would be, ensure an adequate framework. I liked what you said, it should cover 2020 to 2030. Please don't ask me what the world is going to be in 2030. That's your job, the consultant's job. But we all have to stick together to define at least a vision for that. So that we and the private sector, or we as part of the private sector, most of us at least, can do our business in the interest of our customers. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your patience, and I'm like the others, then open for questions. Thank you very much.
Thomas, thanks very much for that insightful presentation. Again, I think quite a lot of food for thought.